You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today we're here with Constanza Roeder. Constanza is the founder and CEO of Hearts Need Art, creative support for patients and caregivers, and the host of the podcast, Arts for the Health of It. Ooh, I love that title. She's a singer, an adolescent leukemia survivor, a speaker, and a thought leader in the field of arts and health. Constanza is on a mission to humanize healthcare through the arts. Constanza is also the recipient of the 2018 Graceann Durr Humanitarian Award and was selected as one of the top 100 healthcare visionaries by the International Forum of Advancement in Healthcare for 2021. Her work has been featured in various publications such as ThriveGlobal, Authority Magazine, Ticker News, National Association of Teachers of Singing, and the cover of MD News Magazine. And I'm just wondering why the heck she hasn't been on ours. So I am so excited to have you here, Constanza. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and share, my story and what I have with your audience.
I'm excited too. But one of the first things I ask all my guests to do is share their story of hope. I personally believe that our stories were given to us as a gift. And when we share them, it literally is like a heartbeat that goes out and touches someone else. So do you want to share your story of hope with us?
Sure. And it very much connects with what I do. So that's a good place to start. So I grew up in Santa Cruz, California. And when I was 13 years old, I was diagnosed with leukemia. And I was treated at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital. The irony is, when I was a kid, I always wanted to go to Stanford for college. I was going to go to Stanford, study astrophysics. I had it all planned out. And I actually did get to go to Stanford, except I got a different education, and it happened to be at their children's hospital instead of the university. So I went through 130 weeks of chemotherapy to treat my leukemia, and I have been cancer-free for, since 2002. So for a long time, which is great. But the hardest part about dealing with cancer, yes, it was physically painful. Yes, there was a lot of just physical suffering, if you will, but the emotional toll was much more painful and lingering. And even after I finished treatment, when everyone was like, "Oh, you should be so excited because treatment's over," that was probably the hardest time of the whole ordeal, because I had to look back and grieve for everything I'd lost, all of those big emotions that kind of got stuffed down just to help survive the trauma I was experiencing. All of a sudden was surfaced and had to be dealt with, or something had to happen. And it was around that time that I was introduced to an organization that had groups for teens that had cancer, and we would get together and create art. And I came from a very musical family, and music was really important during treatment. It's how we would encourage each other and help us hold on to hope while we were going through treatment. But visual arts and other forms of creative expression became really that first place that I felt free to fully express what I'd been through, and even felt like I had the tools in order to do it, because there was stuff that I felt and experienced that I did not have words to express. And I know now that trauma is actually encoded in our brains as sensory information. And so it's often hard for trauma survivors to recall what happened to them, but they remember how they felt. And the arts are sensory based. And so they allow us to express our trauma. And so I didn't know I was doing that, but I knew that it helped. And I knew I felt better when I did it. And I went on to study psychology and music in school, and started a life as a performer and a music educator, and did that for many years. But when I moved to San Antonio with my husband, where I live now, I started volunteering on an adult oncology unit. I had never been in an adult hospital before, much less an adult oncology unit. And I remember the first day that I stepped on the floor, I was like, whoa, this is a little bit different than what I'm used to in the pediatric world. When I was in the hospital, I was never alone. There was always someone coming in and out of my room wanting to play with me, doing activities, arts and crafts. Like it just was, I was inundated with supportive services. And the people I was working with in the adult oncology unit weren't much older than I was when I finished treatment, and were spending weeks and months at a time alone, without family being able to visit, without friends being able to visit because they live far away. They can't afford to come and see them, all these things. And there just weren't enough supportive services to help dealing with the loneliness and the anxiety and the depression and all of the things that just come with being in a hospital for a long period of time. And so I started just with the only thing I knew how to do, and that was sing. And I started going room to room, singing for patients, going in, introducing myself, saying, you know, what kind of music do you like? And trying to get as close as I could to, you know, what they asked for. And this is what the patients told me, it changed their worlds. And it made such a huge impact on that unit. And they kept asking me for more, and they wanted like other arts activities as well that I didn't know how to do. So in 2016, I incorporated Hearts Need Art as a nonprofit here in San Antonio. And we bring artists, musicians, writers into healthcare spaces, really to make sure no one is suffering alone, and to equip people with the tools they need to navigate trauma. You know, the arts have always been the way that humans have coped and healed from times of collective trauma. It's an essential part of being human, and it should be an essential part of the places that we treat humans.
Constanza, like, let me tell you what I thought of when you were telling me this story and how powerful art is for healing. When I was visiting Prague, they had a Jewish center where they would put Jewish people and they tried to make it look normal. Like it had a little store there. But once you got inside, you could see that it was completely not normal. But the outside world, they wanted them to think they were taking care of the Jews. And it was like they were lucky to be here. And when you went in, the children, you weren't allowed to write. You weren't allowed to communicate with the outside of these walls with anyone. And the children that were here were allowed to draw. And because they were so traumatized. And what it turned out to have happened when they were all like leaving this place, whoever survived it, they saved these drawings, all of these drawings. And when you go in, all these children's drawings are up that they were using therapeutically to help put out those emotions, right? Yeah. But what it turned out to be for me when I went there was a history of everything that was really happening behind those walls through the eyes of those children. And it was beautiful. But I thought about it, like it gives me the goosebumps every time I think about like their journey and how they used art even then to get through a horrific time, like to put those emotions out onto paper and then going there. I'm so glad that they were preserved. You see this history of the years that these children were behind these walls and what was really happening through their eyes. So I like connected right then on how art can help people through trauma, whether it's drawing, creating something in clay, like whatever that piece of art is for you, it can be an amazing way to release that trauma that we're pushing down inside.
Absolutely. And that's what the data shows us. You know, we've spent a lot of time in the West kind of pushing the arts to the fringes where it's like, it doesn't really have a purpose. It's just like extra and like kind of nice occasionally. But what we're finding and the data and the research that's coming in the ethnological studies of the role of the arts in cultures around the world and throughout history is that the arts, a lot of times we think of the arts as a product, like a painting, a concert in a hall, but the process of artification is a process that is innate in humans and is essential for humans. There are whole aspects of our being that we cannot express verbally, at least initially. Sometimes once we express it another way, then we can kind of integrate those different forms of expression. But we tend to be very verbal and like word centered, language centered culture. And so these other forms of expression are kind of pushed to the fringes when we're really seeing, oh, actually, we really need these parts, these forms of expression in order to be whole people and to heal parts of us that we really can't heal without. So anyway, it's fascinating. And there's these types of initiatives popping up all around the world. And actually, even in the UK, they've found so much compelling research that the national healthcare system is actually paying for people to engage in arts and cultural activities. And for every dollar they invest in that, or pound, I guess, for every pound they invest in that, they're saving 2.3 pounds at the general practitioner level. They're paying for people to engage in the arts, and they're saving money in their healthcare system because this is so essential for our health and well-being.
By the way, have you ever gone to a museum and you sat and looked at art and you created this emotional build in you from an innate object, right? We took my granddaughter to an art museum, and there was a painting called the Girl in Blue, I think it was called. And she'd spent a lot of time over there, and she was only, I think, 11 at the time. And when I walked over there, I looked at her and she had tears rolling down her eyes. I'm like, why are you crying? Are you okay? She says, this art makes me cry. This painting makes me cry. So we walked over and pulled the history of the art that was drawn. And it was drawn very well. I mean, emotion isn't because it's drawn well or painted well that we cry. There's something that the artist was able to put into that art that drew an emotion out of us. And when we looked it up, her grandmother had commissioned this piece of art. She was the only grandchild. And before the painting was completed, she had drowned. And the grandmother could never look at the art. She never saw the painting and had put it in her attic for years until this artist became super famous. And then it was given to the museum. So the grandmother never laid eyes on it. And my granddaughter, just by looking at this piece of art, could feel the sorrow in that painting. And it was like phenomenal how that is translates to us when people really, it's not like just coloring on a thing. There was some passion when he finished that, knowing the little girl was no longer with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the powerful roles of the arts, is it's revelatory by its very nature. We take artists as an artist, we take the raw material of expression and we transform it. We use our creativity to go from what is and create what could be. That's that role of the imagination. But when we express ourselves through the arts, it helps us connect more deeply with ourselves, with others, with our spirituality, whether you believe in a God or higher power. That's, the arts have always been an integral part of forms of worship. And when we express ourselves more fully, and we can be more fully seen by others, and that's so essential for well-being, is to feel like we are seen and heard and loved. And when we keep our parts of ourselves relegated to the shadows and we don't share it, we're not really experiencing love fully. And we have an epidemic of loneliness in our culture. And we can artify things that aren't helpful to us. Like in the selfie culture, people are artifying themselves when the original intent of artification was to facilitate mother-infant bonding. Those same processes that mothers and caregivers use to bond with their infants, the baby talk, oh my goodness, you're so cute, like all this exaggerated, elaborate processes. These are the same processes artists use to help elicit attention, to help facilitate bonding, help regulate emotion, help mold and shape emotion, rhythm, sound. These are all things that we use to comfort an infant. It is innate. It's innate in us from when we're born. Those infants teach their caregivers how to artify them. So the original reason that we have art is to facilitate love and bonding. And what would happen if we set more of our energy artifying and making special and making much of each other, instead of putting all of our energy into artifying and making much of ourselves? Because when we make much of others, that fosters connection. When we just stay self-focused and artify ourselves, it drives disconnection. And we've made ourselves special, but now we're in our own special bubble that no one can get in. So anyway, so that's what we do when we go into hospitals. We work with artists that are others focused. They're going in to find out what is special and unique and exquisite about the person in front of them, and how can we celebrate that and artify that through artistic expression by reflecting the music that they love. And this transforms people and it affects patient outcomes. Like I was at a conference last year with some of the top minds in healthcare, and one of the main complaints everyone had was patient compliance. They had all this great information and they knew what to do, to what the patient needed to do in order to help themselves, but they couldn't get the patient to do what they told them to do. Why can't they just comply? And the impression I got just listening to them talk is that, man, these people are really frustrated. It seems as if they're frustrated that the human being in front of them is not behaving like the statistical models that they studied. Connecting with a person is different than just knowing the right answer. Right. So, for example, there is a little while ago, I was on the unit with my piano doing some bedside music, and one of the bone marrow transplant nurses came and found me, and she's like, "Hey, we have a problem. We have a patient we're having a problem with," which is totally normal. This is most of the referrals we receive from healthcare staff as patients are having problems with. And she said he has refused to take a shower for 4 days, which is an infection risk. Daily showers are really important for preventing hospital-borne infection. And this guy had no immune system, so this was dangerous. He had refused to take his medication that morning, and he had refused to let his doctor come in and examine him. And then he had just thrown his nurse out, and he wouldn't let anyone in his room. And so the nurse came and found me, and she's like, "Do you think he might like some music? Do you think you could try going in there?" And I was like, sure. I had never met this man. We didn't have rapport at all. So I didn't know what to expect. So I knocked on the door, and I heard, "Who is it?" I like peeked in. I was like, "Hey, it's Constanza. Like, would you like to hear some music today?" And he's like, "Oh, okay, sure. Come on in." And I was like, "What kind of music would you like?" And he shared, he wanted to hear some old hymns and some classic country and just some different music that was meaningful to him. And so thankfully I knew most of the stuff he was requesting. So we played the music, had a great time. And when I left, the nurse went back in, and he agreed to take a shower, and he agreed to take his meds, and he agreed to let his doctor come in and examine him. I didn't say a word about any of those things while I was in there. But what happens so often when we're going through trauma is our nervous system lights up. It's on fire. We're keyed up. And we also often put up armor to protect ourselves when we feel vulnerable. And when we're in that state, our higher order thinking doesn't really turn on well. And so we can't make good decisions for our health. But when we feel seen and heard and loved, and that music and art is able to flow through the cracks in people's armor and caress and see and sing over that infant that is upset, and to sing to them and calm down their physiology. And that's why it works, because we connected with him and we made him feel loved. And then he's able to comply, quote unquote. Shocking when you just treat humans like humans.
I found myself recently in the ER, and it was a 6-hour wait for me. Oof, and I know, and I wasn't the only one. There was a lot of people there. And because of COVID in Los Angeles, they can't have anyone in there but the patient. So think about this. You have people who are in there that are sick. They're scared. They're waiting hours thinking they've been forgotten. I'm here because it's, in my case, it's an emergency. And most of them, it's an emergency room. It's an emergency. And they took away when I told the lady, like, you deserve to get yelled at. You have people in here waiting for hours. Like, she doesn't deserve to get yelled at, but I mean, you have people waiting here for hours. They're scared. They're sick. And you took away their emotional support person. And they're there all by themselves. Why, instead of having a big burly guard who comes up and says, "You can't be here," why isn't there a pleasant person walking around saying, oh, I know I know it's really hard waiting here on your own. Do you need anything? Can I help you? So they know they're being heard there. I haven't been forgotten out there. Yeah. Or even what if we gave these adults a coloring book? Would you mind coloring something for us or drawing something for us? We want to put it up on the wall for your experience here. And then all these sick people's pictures are on the wall, super soothing, right? I think there's so many other things we could be doing instead of just taking away their emotional support person and everyone yelling at each other.
Have you been peeking in our program planning meetings?
No, but I think that
we're actually working on a pilot this very thing. Yeah.
And I remember saying you took away their emotional support person at their scariest time. Like people, every time someone coughed, they'd be like, oh my God, do they have COVID? And here yet they're sick thinking they're dying. That's why they're in there. I know for me, it was my heart. And I'm like, am I having a heart attack? It's been 6 hours. I must not be. Like nobody's rushing out here. And I wasn't the only one. There was an older man that was there for the same sort of heart things. And I was like, what is happening? And people were screaming at them, like screaming at the people behind. And of course, they've been screamed at all day. So they're screaming back. Yeah. I was like, this is insanity.
Yep.
There was no music. There was no TV. My husband, who is a doctor, was so worried about me. It was pouring rain the day I was in the ER. The whole front of the building is glass. He stood outside in the pouring rain in the glass where he can keep an eye on me in case I killed over. Like seriously. And I'm thinking, this is insanity. And I'm like, I'll just go home. Here's what I'll do. I'll go home. I'll call an ambulance. They have to take me right back.
Oh my gosh.
And I kept thinking I looked around, there's people definitely sicker than me. So I'm like, I'll be fine. If I'm going to drop dead, this is a place to do it.
Can't be anywhere better. Well, and it's so hard for healthcare workers right now. It's really, I sit in on a lot of leadership meetings in hospitals, and it's really sad. It's really sad. And they're understaffed. They're tired. They've been yelled at. They've been spit on, and they're at their limit, and people are leaving in droves. And this is for me, it's a no-brainer because we have this place that needs more people with healing presence to help improve that environment of care. And we have this whole population of artists, of underemployed artists and musicians that have largely been out of work off and on throughout the pandemic that would love to do this work, that would love to be in healthcare settings and providing this kind of care for people. I mean, the people that we bring in, we bring in some symphony members occasionally. And when we get visiting musicians, what they always say is, this is why we have music. And I'm like, yeah, this is why we have music. This is where we need music. So for me, it's like, this is a no-brainer. We can provide meaningful economic opportunities for creatives in our community who are healers. That is our heritage as artists, we're healers. Let's put them in our healing facilities where we need more people who are healers. That's just, am I crazy? I don't know.
It's like totally like a duh.
Yes. I just feel like I'm the duh police. I just go around hitting people in the head, duh, come on.
Constanza, where can people find you and learn more about what you're doing and maybe get involved?
Sure. That's a great question. So you can find out more about our organization at heartseenart.org. If you're interested in learning more about how the arts impact our health and well-being, you can listen to our podcast. You can find it on all the places. It's called Arts for the Health of It. Little, kitschy name. And if you're a healthcare worker and you're listening and you're burned out, I would highly recommend you enroll in our Gratitude Grams program on our website. You just go to our website, click on Gratitude Grams. We'll match you with one of our artists, and you'll receive regular messages of thanks from people in the community, and along with a 3 to 5 minute video of an uplifting song or a simple doodle activity or a writing prompt, to something to kind of help shift your mental space and give you a way to express yourself, but really to help you feel like you are seen and we value you and we see the sacrifice you're making. So you can and then conversely, if you want to write a note to a healthcare worker, you can do that on the same page, the Gratitude Gram page, and we pass those on. And there's no cost for either the healthcare provider or to write a note to a healthcare provider. So I would recommend that.
That is beautiful. We're going to put all of her links, Constanza, all your links are going to be put in this so that they can just connect with you right away and be a part of that. Like we always want to, if someone's mistreated us, we want someone to be heard, right? We want to write those letters. We want to make those phone calls, but we always forget when someone's done something kind and they've gone overboard to like make you comfortable, to say thank you and to do that in writing, or to make that phone call like, hey, I had the best service there, or someone treated me extra kind. And we need to remember to do that and start balancing it out. So thank you so much for being here today. I really have enjoyed this talk with you.
Me as well. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show. That'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.